Something is happening in this place. Can you feel it? There is an energy that moves inside these walls that reminds me that there is a spirit alive in this world over which death has no dominion. And that is why we come, because, see, we are hungry for it. We crave it in this world that is full of betrayals, in this world that is so often difficult for us to survive in, full of violence and depression and a lack of education and health care and jobs. We crave a spirit that fills us, that fills our hunger. And so we come because our souls are thirsty for truth, and we want to be surrounded by companions who are seeking that truth with us. We come because our souls are thirsty for life, to receive a world that will calm the pangs of our hungry souls. Receive a word that will calm the pangs of our hungry souls. Because we do not live on bread alone. We do not live on bread alone. We come because we hunger for the reminder that we are all connected and that we are all children of God. Now, you know, I led communion last week at Easter, and there were about 60 of you all who chose to attend. And it was so powerful for me to lead that service. See, I've led communion before, but in a much less formal setting. I'd never led it with the addition of the cleansing ritual that Dorothy and Danny helped us do. I've never led it following a powerful Easter sermon like the one that we heard Easter Sunday morning. I'd never heard it in the context of Holy Week, of moving from Good Friday to Sunday morning. But see, communion points to the very thing that this church embodies, and I believe we embody it every Sunday. And that is that we come here to be fed. We come here to quench our longing to belong, to quench our thirst for this source of life that sustains us beyond anything that is going on in our lives at a given moment, so that we can make it through another week. We come to hear the calling on our lives so that we will use our gifts to change the world. You see, communion reminds us about what we have in common. The hunger, that we all thirst, that we all must eat. I have an interesting story. You know, my daughter is 22 months old, and I keep a box of little chocolate graham crackers in my car, and so I was putting her in a car seat, and if you've ever dealt with a toddler in a car seat, you know that they can stiffen their bodies in ways that are just impossible. So I keep some graham crackers in my car to keep me from hurting her. And so I'm telling her, bribing her, that I have graham crackers in the car as I'm buckling her in, and I go to pull out a handful and give them to her, and she says, "No, Mama T, box." And I said, okay. So I put my hand in to make sure the whole package wouldn't come out, and it didn't, so I gave her the box. And I'm finishing buckling her up, and I mean, she's 22 months old. And this child pulls out a little bunny, and I watch her, and she looks at it, and I'm just buckling it around, and she goes, "Here, Mama T." 22 months old, and the first thing she does is offer me her food to share. Now, I don't know how many 22-month-olds you've been around, but that is not a normal thing. I mean, if I had opened that box of graham crackers in my own car, I probably would have put it straight in my mouth and then given her one.
Would you like some?
So you can't teach that, right? You can't. Well, I'd like to believe actually that you can teach that. And I think that communion is one of the ways that we do teach that, where we remember whose we are and to whom we belong and who it is that is among us that we must care for. Now, there's a Chinese proverb that says, "A person who has food has many problems, but a person who has no food has only one problem." Right? Because it gets in the way of everything else. people handle the hunger in their lives very differently. There's this spiritual and bodily hunger that can lead to addiction, can lead to all kinds of things. But some people, you see, feed themselves so frequently that they may not even know what hunger feels like, numbing themselves completely to the dull ache of hunger pain. See, hunger reminds us that we're alive. So I implore you to try to feel that hunger every now and then if you are one who has an abundance. But there are others among us who know that hunger is so persistent in their lives that their attention is constantly pulled to how and when they might get another meal. And they have little attention or time for anything but survival. Now, there is a film out that is based on a series of books that has the same title as my sermon. How many have you seen The Hunger Games? Oh, lots of you. Excellent. The series is actually by Suzanne Collins, and I haven't seen the film, but I have read all 3 of the books. As a matter of fact, I devoured them. I read the first one in one day and then bought the next 2, one right after another, choosing to savor them by stretching them out over a course of a week because I didn't want the series to end. But I want to tell you a little bit about that story because I think that it is a commentary on today's culture that a lot of our young adults are reading right now. And so if you don't know it, I think that you should check it out, either the books or the film, so that you can speak to them about what they see in that book that feels real to them in the world. It is a conversation opener. So the story takes place in a post-war future of Panem, a single country that once occupied all of North America. And in the world of the Hunger Games, you see everything is controlled by the capital, which uses its power and money to control the districts. Now, as punishment for an attempted rebellion against the capital that was almost 75 years before, the capital required that one boy and one girl between the ages of 12 and 18 from each of the districts be selected by lottery each year to participate in a televised survivor-like event that the entire country is required to watch. Now, those unlucky children whose names are drawn are called tributes, and they must fight in an outdoor arena controlled by the capital, killing off one another until only one, the victor, remains. Now, the tributes, as they prepare for the games, have to fight for sponsors to be able to afford food and training equipment and education that will help them survive. And they must make constant choices about who they have to play to in order to receive what they need, because they are without resources and without a voice. Many of the tributes create alliances with one another that help them to survive a little bit longer, but ultimately the winner is forced to kill not only every ally, but also another child from their home district who is also selected, and likely someone whom they know. The story is narrated by a 16-year-old girl named Katniss Everdeen, a girl from District 12 who volunteers, actually, for the Hunger Games to replace her younger sister, whose name was drawn. And we are invited in this series to struggle with Katniss, sent into the Hunger Games with a baker's son from District 12, who once snuck her food when her family was desperately trying to survive when she was younger. So we watch Katniss and the citizens of District 12 as they are forced to break the law to keep from starving in their own district, creating an informal and illegal marketplace so that they can survive. Katniss actually hunts for food in a forbidden natural area outside the otherwise patrolled district. She becomes a sort of accidental heroine as she attempts to maintain her integrity in what seems like an absolutely impossible situation. Now, in juxtaposition with the district life is the capital life. The citizens of the capital live these lives of complete and total excess and luxury at the expense of the districts. They are obsessed with their appearance, and they spend their time focused on fashion, body alterations, and socializing. including, interestingly, dyeing their skin color to the fashionable color of the week. Now, the most highly prized social event in the capital are the parties and the activities that surround the Hunger Games, as though they are oblivious to the violence and the destruction that it causes. Now, all of this while families in the districts are on the brink of starvation. So see, if a family runs out of food, they can ask for and receive additional rations, but it's in trade for adding their child's name on another lottery entry, increasing their chances of having to send their children to fight to the death in a capital arena. Now, some families who are particularly poor or who have had to trade away their food for medicine because of ill family members have had to enter their children's names an additional 20 or 30 times, multiplying the likelihood of those children being selected. And the irony of this inequality is underscored by a capital citizen, Effie Trinket, whose favorite phrase is, "And may the odds forever be in your favor," when most of the odds, of course, are not in the favor of the majority of the citizens. And there's something that even touches a grain of truth about the Hunger Games themselves, about this arena, as we watch our wars on television. Now, maybe this seems more plausible to me because when I was 16, the very same age as Katniss Everdeen, I was an exchange student in Belgium in Gulf War I when it broke out, and was glued to the television watching this war in a far-off land that I knew very little about, watching airstrikes being shown on TV seconds after they'd actually occurred. Do you remember that, some of you? It seemed like a video game, but it was people's lives. And I was fearing at that time for the lives of my inner city friends who had joined the military in order to make a better life for their family in a struggling economy. Now, the Hunger Games is fiction. And maybe it seems far-fetched, but to me, the idea of a country that allows its citizens and its children to starve, while a significant portion of the population waste the majority of the resources, doesn't seem that out of the question. You see, I have never understood how we can be told that there is enough food to feed everyone, and yet everyone does not have access to that food. Can you believe that? In every country, there are people who are starving, and the most basic needs of millions of people are going unmet. Makes me think about that song. It's Tracy Chapman, right? Why do the babies starve when there's enough food to feed the world? You know that song? 90s. It's amazing. She goes on. Why are there so many of us? Why, when there's so many of us, are there people still alone? Why are the missiles called peacekeepers when they're aimed to kill? Why is a woman still not safe when she's in her home? Love is hate, war is peace, no is yes, and we're all free. But I digress a bit. So why do the babies starve when there's enough food to feed the world? And what about the babies of Oklahoma, our babies? Now, you may not be surprised to learn that 1 in every 5 of Oklahoma's children is at risk of going to bed hungry. 1 out of 5. In Oklahoma, according to the U.S. Department of Agriculture, we rank 8th in the nation in the number of people per capita who are hungry. We are 7th in the nation in the number of people per capita who are food insecure, at 13%, which is well above the national average. Now, just in case you don't know, food insecure means that meals are missed because money must go to other expenses such as medicine or childcare or health care or rent. It's when a household lacks enough money and other resources for food. Now, there are so many more statistics that I could give you, and they are not pretty. So why do the babies starve, and what can we do about it? I was at a luncheon this week with Bishop Pearson. Actually, many of you were there. I know Nicole was there and Carmen. For Sally's List, it's an organization targeting women who are interested in making a difference in Oklahoma. And I had my world rocked by one Marianne Williamson, the famous author of The Age of Miracles, and she was not talking about miracles, I will tell you. She was talking to Oklahoma women, trying to encourage them to use their voices to make a difference by running for office and speaking up on issues that matter to us. Because she believes that the issues that matter to us are not necessarily being heard in a majority male government. Now, there was a part of her speech that sent chills, running through my body. Maybe you know what I mean. Sometimes when a truth is spoken so clearly that your body responds before your mind can even grasp what is going on. Do you know what I'm talking about? Chill bumps or chill down your spine. When the spirit is alive and moving before you even have a chance to figure out why. And that happened with Marianne Williamson. You see, she had said that her concept of the power that we have as women, of her understanding of feminism, had evolved over time. She said it used to be that she would look down on the life of her mother, the life that her mother led as a member of the greatest generation who stayed at home and raised the children, took care of the household. She said, as kind of a 1970s feminist, that she'd come to believe, though, that there's something archetypally true about women needing to take care of the children and take care of the home. Now, this part in her speech, you need to know that it was tough for me, because my generation of women does not want to be labeled as homemaker or as limited to child care, even though it is a huge responsibility and an important one. So I almost shut off, and this is where the Spirit moves, right? Turns a cold heart, right? So Marianne says, her understanding of that truth, there was truth to it, she said, but her understanding of that truth had become less literal and more spiritual. Oh, really? I thought. She said, yes, we should in fact be taking care of the home as women, except that her current understanding of home was no longer limited to just her household. Her current understanding of home is that we ought to be caring for this beautiful planet on which we live, a planet whose resources are being spent at alarming rates, a planet who needs an advocate. And that voice, she challenged us, is a woman's voice. Marianne Williamson said, women should in fact be concerning ourselves with raising the children, not rejecting that role, whether we have children or not, because our voices should speak for the children of the world. We should be concerned with feeding and the care and the education of the babies in our town and in our state and in our country and in the world. This is a population who does not have a voice in our current system because, see, our current system runs on short-term economic gain. Short-term economic gain. This is a population who has the odds definitely not in their favor. And so Marianne Williamson is arguing for women to gain political power and to turn the model of government away from this business model of short-term economic gain and towards the model of a household where it is clear that sacrifices must be made to support the least among us, where you work a little harder and you get up if the baby is crying. You feed the children. You educate them. She believed in us working towards a household model where priority becomes feeding and clothing and nurturing the children and preparing them with skills and an education to be able to go off on their own and take care of themselves and hopefully sustain themselves and be able to create a new generation that they can care for also. She wants us to move away from this business model of short-term economic gain and towards a household model where we care for those among us who are elderly and ill. A household model where we have to make tough decisions every day in order to be certain that the disempowered among us, the young, the old, the ill, are cared for. The disenfranchised have someone speaking up for them. Those are the kind of family values that I believe in. Household family values. That is a focus on the family that I can focus on. Marianne Williamson's charge that day was for women to step up and make themselves heard because no evil, no corruption, No amount of greed, nothing on this green earth can handle the strength and the power of a female mammal protecting her babies and defending her home. And the world needs a voice like that. And the children need a voice like that. And the disempowered need a voice like that. So she challenged us to use the power that we already have within us to make a difference in the world. You don't have to run for office. My point is that this is not a game. Hunger is not a game. People's lives are at stake. But if it were a game, Oklahoma would be losing badly. See, Oklahoma needs our voices and our resources, our creative ideas and our skills to make this better. Now, maybe you're like me and you're tired of hearing about how often Oklahoma loses at these kind of games. Number one, in incarcerated women in the world. High teen pregnancy statistics, high domestic violence, high drug use, poor education. Now, maybe you've just decided to tune all this out because it's too much to handle. Well, let's go back to the scripture, shall we? We cannot live on bread alone, but we sure need it. You still have to be fed in order to move forward and work on other things. But Jesus also said, stay awake. So I have articulated a call on the lives of the women in this room to use the power that God has given you to take care of the children. And so now, gentlemen, let me also speak to you. You good stewards of this earth. And this applies to everyone, really. Stay awake, the Proverbs say, too. Stay awake, says the proverb. There will be food to spare. Stay awake. Don't numb out. Don't shut down. Don't be quiet. Don't turn off. Stay awake and stay alert. Ask questions. Speak up for the children. Stay awake, pleads Jesus when he goes off to pray at Gethsemane. He tells his disciples, do not fall asleep. Keep watch. Look out, because the betrayer is coming. Stay awake, for the hour has come when the least among us need us to step up and speak for them. And unto the least of these, consider that a prayer to speak up for them. So when our concept of who are our brothers and sisters and who are our children needs to be expanded to include those whose voices are not heard, if we could all stay awake to the problems before us, we might be able to find a creative solution. Stay awake to the waste that we participate in and to the needs of our own neighbors. Stay awake to the issues. Now, I'm not asking you to solve the world's hunger problems today, because that would make anyone numb out. I'm asking you to act locally, to expand your area of concern. Because, see, you can help locally with Partners in Education. I want you to find your order of service and turn it over on the back. On the back is all the lay leadership. And if you look down in alphabetical order, right down to Partners in Education, where it has Nancy McDonald's name. Partners in Education. You can email pie@allsoulschurch.org. And see, in many of our adopted schools, they need your help. And here's where they need your help. In many of our adopted schools, many of our children are surviving primarily because of the food that they receive from school. And so what happens on the weekends? Our volunteers help to provide backpacks of food for them to take home to sustain them until breakfast on Monday. And what happens during the summer? Programs have been created in order to support these families during the summer months, and those programs are forming right now. So if you want to help, I ask that you email that address and tell them that you want to help with the backpack program or a summer food program, either with your time or your resources. Because I just want you to think about, what if the children that we're going without were, in fact, your children? What would you do? See, I believe that you would find a way. that you would advocate with every single breath of your being, that the very core of your soul would help you to find a way to be able to get those children what they need. And see, we have adopted these children, these schools, as a church. So these are your children. So I invite you to do what you can to help them make their way through this world with what they need to thrive, not just survive. And if you are a member of this church and you need that kind of help, call me. Bottom of the order service, confidential voicemail, dials direct in. Because we need to help you too. We want to take care of our church family. Now at 10 o'clock, we had a child dedication, as I so mistakenly started to do again, for a child that has become part of our community, and the words that we say are printed there in the order of service. So as I conclude, I just want us to think about, to vow this day, to make the welfare of those children in our adopted schools your responsibility, as though they were one of your own. Because I would like the people of this church to understand their solemn obligation to share in the upbringing of those beloved children, to pledge yourselves to promote their welfare in mind and body and soul, as we say, to the end that they might grow in beauty, love, and truth. And so stay awake and share what you can. Amen.